Paintball nerd.
All right, today's guest on Paintball Nerds Fun 5 has been playing paintball since 1999, 23 years. He began his pro career with X-Factor in 2006. In 2009, he went to Dynasty, then back to X-Factor in 2011. In 2022, he went back to Dynasty, where they just won a World Cup. He's the owner of Project Paintball, which he started in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Archie.
What's up, guys?
How you doing, Archie? Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a cool thing what you're doing. I personally have watched most of the interviews you've done, and it's kind of a cool format. Kind of, more paintball media is always good, and in general, especially like in the off season too. It's like everybody's kind of a little bored almost. But yeah, I like seeing the content. I like. I know you're doing the articles as well beforehand, which I also dig that too. So yeah, it's a cool thing. I'm happy to be here.
Right on, dude. Yeah, I'm stoked to have you. I most recently remember watching you on Netflix in the Best Kids in Texas.
Yeah,
and that was really cool to see paintball on Netflix. First time ever.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's funny because like that project was, it's got film of our team from like, our divisional years. So it's kind of interesting to see so much time documented in a series. And that obviously, way back then that wasn't a thought at all as to what it would be. And so then to hear it was going to end up being like a real documentary. And then after, I remember they did the premiere for it. And then Dan was kind of long shot talking about maybe getting on Netflix or being on Amazon and stuff like that. And then for it to obviously happen is pretty surreal. I still get messages every, probably once a month. And at this point, that thing's been out for years. I still get pretty frequent messages like, "Hey man, I saw you on Amazon the other day." And I'm like, "Oh geez, I kind of forget it's happened just because it's been several years, but definitely one of the cooler parts of my career and certainly like playing career. That'll be a cool one like in 20 years to talk about.
Absolutely, man. I think I actually consumed it on, it wasn't Netflix, it was Apple TV. I actually bought it. I saw it on Apple TV. I couldn't buy it fast enough, actually.
That's right. I think it might have premiered on Apple TV or maybe, and then I think it's on Amazon now, but it might have been on Netflix at one point or another, to be honest. I don't remember because I haven't looked at it in a while, but yeah, nonetheless, it's on a streaming service. So it's definitely to the masses.
Yeah, man. And it must have been an amazing thing to be a part of. You think about like paintball media, and I think about like the old movies like Push and Sunday Drivers, and these are films that impacted my career as a paintball player, and no doubt Best Kids in Texas did that for the new generation.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. I mean, I know a lot of people kind of got their start into paintball just hearing about it from that docuseries or documentary.
Wow.
I know a lot of people have come up to me over the years in person and said like, "Hey man, I saw you guys on this." And that really kind of started me getting into paintball. So, it's kind of just like a lot of the things that paintball has done for a lot of people. For me in particular, it's a cool thing to be a part of, but on the other end of it, it's also like really cool for people to be inspired by something like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You've been in paintball for a long time, and you've been at the top for the long time. Playing with X-Factor and Dynasty, who are two of the top teams. I'm sure you've got a lot of memories over these past several years. Do you have something that really sticks out for you?
I mean, yeah,
I won't make you pick one. But.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of memories that I've got that are really, very potent for me. I would say, like our first World Cup win with X-Factor was really special. That was my first World Cup win, and it was the first pro World Cup for the team. Actually, the only one. At that time, like our team was so young still. I mean, that was 2012, 2013. Yes, it was 10 years ago. I mean, we were a self-grown team for the most part. I mean, it was just a really big accomplishment, big achievement for everybody on the team. Some of the HB wins, in my opinion, that's like still the pinnacle of the sport as far as like the coolest tournament to be a part of or to win. And I've won it several times in pro with Dynasty and X-Factor. And then obviously like this year in particular for me was just such a phenomenal, and it was just like a really, it was just a heartfelt season for me, to be honest. I mean, I left my team that, was essentially, a team that I groomed and built for the last decade, and helped bring that team to be a top 4 team in the world for many, many years, including a series championship. And I know a lot of people were really surprised for me to leave that team, but for me, it was time for something different and time for something new. And kind of, I was just ready to do something else and kind of be a little more inspired by, a new set of faces around me. And so everything that ended up happening this year, obviously won 3 out of the 4 big events. And we kept a streak alive for the team. And then obviously winning World Cup with Oliver and kind of all the storylines that kind of ended up happening at the end of the year is just pretty incredible. It's just hard to say I'm going to top this season in my career, to be honest. But I'm just happy to have been a part of it.
Yeah. You're not retiring anytime soon, are you?
I mean, I don't know how soon I will retire, but I don't see it happening immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, things happen, and also I've got a lot of hobbies and I've got a lot of things that I'm looking forward to doing. So, at this point in my life, in my paintball career, I've put a lot into the game and into the sport, and that's gonna go unchanged probably forever. Being that I'm in the industry as far as a business, and obviously I play tournaments, and I don't see myself stopping for a while. But at the same time, I do have other mountains that I want to climb and other things that I want to do at a high level, and at kind of like the level that it takes to master those things. So, I mean, I won't be playing forever, but I'm really thoroughly enjoying myself. And right now, like the effort is worth, what I'm getting out of the sport, and certainly out of the competitive nature of playing at the highest level, what I'm getting out of it is worth my time and worth my effort. And actually it's quite a relief to feel like, the effort is actually just paying back, tenfold almost. So it's been a real dream.
So what are some of the other things that you'd want to pursue outside of paintball?
Yeah, other businesses, other hobbies. I'm learning how to make music, like produce music,
Cool.
and being a DJ. Like, to me, that it's very interesting to me. Also, traveling a lot more, specifically to do like ancient psychedelic experiments.
Yeah.
So that's something that interests me. And those types of things, you have to be gone for like weeks on end, and obviously the paintball schedule is somewhat demanding.
Yeah.
So, I got to try to find ways to make those things kind of work within themselves. That's another thing. And then just new businesses, new other ideas. I like to have a lot of free time so that I can really expand and explore what's going on in my brain and what's going on in my mind, and really like be able to dive into stuff like that, whatever those thoughts are. So, and obviously, I mean, you've played pro paintball for a long time, and you understand that when you're playing the pro paintball thing, it is very mind consuming, and certainly to be at like the peak of the sport, that's what it demands, and like I said, I want to be able to give that to some other things. And I'm quite looking forward to it as well. But at the same time, like, this thing is really great and it's really special. And I'm so happy and elated to be a part of it.
Yeah, you're kind of describing like a path that Oliver has taken. He that's really what he did, is he left paintball and went on a spiritual journey.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair to say for sure. In his regard, I would say that I've been on a little bit of a spiritual journey the last few years, and it's been quite rewarding for me, and it's been interesting to say the least. It's been quite humbling, and yeah, I'm definitely, maybe in this in the seasons of my life as far as spiritual awakening, I'm probably in the spring, but I'm looking forward to getting a little further on down that kind of pathway, if you will.
So tell me about this spiritual journey. Like, what everyone's is a little bit different. I'm sure everyone pursues that a different way. So in what ways are you pursuing, let's say, enlightenment?
Well, I mean, there's a many ways you can do it. You can look within, you can look around, you can kind of dive into some substances, or ancient cultures, right? To me, I don't think like any one thing is kind of the end all be all. But I think it really starts with I think it all starts with looking inward and starting to realize that there's a lot more to this world, this reality, this place we live in, than maybe what meets the eye or maybe what you've been told throughout your whole life. And I think once you start seeing the breadcrumbs, you start to follow them and see that there's actually a lot more than you can chew. And at that point, you can start to get kind of excited about these things. And then, there is always some level of fear you have to overcome, because when you're talking about being shown things that you've never thought to be possible or even thought to exist, then there starts this like kind of weird questioning phase, which thankfully in my life, I've been questioning things for a long time. I mean, I remember being, 11 years old and questioning some of the things that a lot of people were telling me. And I think that lended itself to me kind of like pursuing paintball at a deep level, and now other things at a what I would consider a meaningful level. But yeah, you start to see things and you start to feel things and you start to understand things that, maybe that you didn't, like I said, you didn't know could exist or even could hypothesize. And then once you start getting, unraveling the thread a little bit, it can be quite mind blowing, but also rewarding in a lot of ways. For me, for some context, like I would say that, at least in the journeys I've taken thus far, my favorite takeaways are the kind of expansive mindset, like trying to wrap your head around ideas that you never, ever, like prior to these experiences, I would have never, ever been capable to even think about. And so now when I'm able to think about those things, it makes a lot of the things that we're dealing with here now, honestly, like quite simple. And when you start thinking about things on that grand of a scale, that much more grand of a scale, and also when you think about like the unicity of, or when you understand unicity in a much deeper sense, when you're coming back to like, this very simple reality that we live in, at least in comparison, it does seem to be, it seems like you're just thinking on a much higher speed,
You mentioned breadcrumbs. Like, do you think that there's kind of like a code that's written within us to seek out these answers?
A code that's, man, because like to me I would argue that, I mean, I would say that your body has more wisdom than you could ever imagine, right? And through the way we grow up and the way we're taught, and certainly like, I would argue through systems in place, we aren't really shown that side of our wisdom in like the common education system, right? And so is it within everybody? Absolutely. But some people, it's going to be harder for them to kind of see those tracks or see those breadcrumbs. And sometimes you need help. I mean, there's a reason why I got started on this path, and that was because it was suggested to me by a good friend of mine who knows me well and he knew I was a spiritual person, but hadn't quite connected yet to, like what I would say is like the ultimate spirit.
What is the ultimate spirit?
I mean, I would call that God.
And what is God?
I don't know yet. I just got a small glimpse.
What is consciousness?
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a tough one to answer. I would argue
So
we
do
are
you think
consciousness. I would argue the collective of everyone's thoughts and yeah. I mean, consciousness is a big thing. It's a very big thing. It's a but to define it in words, that's very hard to do.
do you think that it's written within people to know the difference between right and wrong, or do you think that's taught?
I think that. Well, I think it's both. I think at a guttural level a lot of things that are right and wrong, but at the same time we're taught to ignore these things. So depending on how far down that line of teaching you are, you might completely not understand how to trust anything at all about the way your body's showing you and giving you messages, right? And I believe that's very common, unfortunately, nowadays. People don't understand how important, how smart their own instincts are, right? I mean, we're literally taught to avoid, almost like not even trust those at all. And what I think about in a game of paintball, a sport of paintball, it's such a magnificent, spotlight on how important trusting your instincts are. But again, like stuff like that really isn't taught that much. I would argue it's only really taught in sports.
So when it comes to paintball, Archie, I mean, you've played with some of the best in the game, the best in the game. Do you have a favorite player?
Yeah, I do. I mean, for me, I've had some different favorite players over my career, but like a long-standing one is definitely Oliver. I mean, he's such a unique player in the sense that he's a master of a lot of different things, and that doesn't just mean on the field. And paintball, with regard to success, it takes so many things. It's not just about being out there and like being great at every aspect of that, but it's also about like the intangibles and also and like being able to like really bring your team up, and that's one of the things that I think that's the hardest thing in paintball to do. And for whatever reason, Oliver just has that so mastered down, and I would argue like, if you're talking about like strictly on the field ability, there are probably other guys that I would say, yeah, for sure. Like my favorite guy to like really learn from and stuff like that. But when it comes to the stuff that, at least in my personal opinion, I find much more difficult, it's that part. And I don't think anybody ever even like holds a candle to Oliver's torch on that regard. But as far as players are concerned, like Ryan, to me Ryan Greenspan obviously is a master paintball player and a master of the sport. And there's for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons I really do look up to Ryan so much is because he is constantly his own best friend, in the sense that he's constantly looking at ways, no matter what he's doing, he's looking at ways to improve. And he's able to check his ego, even though we all know how great he is, right? And I do think that when I relate my game to somebody's game, I would say it's most relatable to Ryan's, just because I've found success in a very similar fashion, where it's you play a point, and no matter how good you play, you try to find you play the devil's advocate against yourself, right? Okay, what could I have done better? If they did this to stop me, what would I have done then? Right. And I think Ryan does that well. And that's obviously one of the reasons why he's been one of the best players forever.
Yeah, kind of like a on the fly chess player, right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and again, like if you're honest with yourself, and I've been saying this for a few years, but if you're honest with yourself, then that's what's ultimately going to get you to be, a true master. We're all competing and we all have ego and we're all, we all want to be the best. But the difference between like the true best and the guys that just want to be the best, or the guys that think they're the best, is, there's guys that, literally work tirelessly to find flaws in their game. And there's guys that don't. And they want to just think they're there. And there's quite a big difference between those two types of players. And, being at the tippy top of anything takes like that immense amount of effort, and thought. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that's hard to do. It really is. It's difficult, and And
Yeah.
but again, if you do difficult things, usually, if you do difficult things for long enough, you start to kind of see you start to see a reward in it.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it's not funny. It's not a coincidence. It must be fact that the best players that I've spoken to say that they are pursuing ways to expose their weaknesses.
Right.
They're not so much focusing on, oh, I'm really good at this. Yes, they understand those things, but they're more so putting themselves in a position where their weaknesses can be exposed, and therefore they can work on them.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing, naming a flaw, naming a weakness that's the start of it, or acceptance, right? I mean, that's really what it is. It's accepting that there is something to improve on. Yeah.
So Archie, when I think about you on the field, for some reason I always think about like a yellow frame or a gold frame goggle. But do you have like a superstitious item or something that's like your signature thing?
Not really. I've got a few things that are like mainstays in my bag. I've got a tree trunk bandana I've been wearing for many years at this point, and I've got a few.
I'm surprised
headbands.
that thing's been holding on, man. Like those.
It's got a few holes in it. It got a couple last year, early in the season at one practice. I was a little upset about it. But yeah, I mean, I don't have anything that's like my for sure go-to. If there was anything that was superstitious for me, it would be as if like I have this weird superstition to take a shit like within 10 minutes of a match. And it's just my body and nervous shit for sure. But that's just like that is a superstition. I would call it one at this point. But yeah, I've got some pieces of gear that kind of stick around, namely headgear. But I'm not like super religious. I've swapped a few pieces out this season. I don't know if I don't know. I guess I kind of do believe in superstition. I just haven't, or the power of it. Right. But I've been I've been kind of playing with like my own version of a superstition this season. And that is like a really deep level of belief in what is going to happen. It's been paying off.
I imagine it would, because your belief shapes your action, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's what I believe. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that could be a superstition. I guess a superstition is a belief system, right?
Yeah, fair. I think that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's been kind of like playing with Magic a little bit. It's been fun. It's been enjoyable.
Yeah, and you're kind of like projecting your own reality onto the field, and then it's kind of manifesting in front of you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. I mean, we'll see if I'm still trying to figure out how to deepen that practice, but I would say that this year was a pretty good example, or at least for me it was. Maybe it's just really a strange coincidence, or a really lucky season. I don't know.
Yeah, or is there even such thing as coincidences?
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think there are. I think that there's incidences that coincide with each other, but they're not coincidences.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, yeah, it's funny how the world works. So we'll keep testing them. I'll keep testing things in my own little curious fashion.
Yeah. Is your tree trunk Sandana one of the original ones?
So I have an original one that is since it's retired. That one I honestly can't bring myself to wear it, because if it gets shot, it's a gaping, big hole. So I was given one by a friend of mine like maybe 5 years ago or so. And so I've been rocking that one. It was a remake one, but I actually like it. I kind of like it more than my original, to be honest with you, because the coloring on is really just a little more vibrant. Yeah, it looks like it looks like it's very new. And it's kept its color, which I like, and that was pretty rare for those old ones. It was they'd lighten up over a couple of seasons and then they're pretty faded early. But I actually like this one because it's kept the color. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, the old ones sell for a ridiculous amount though.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like anything, right? supply and demand. You can't get them anymore, not like that.
True.
So it's just,
Yeah.
and then also the history of them, I mean, you'd argue that, I mean, obviously Sandana, the new Sandana and even Hormesis are all based around that idea of the coveted head garment,
Mm-hmm.
So to have one of the true OG ones, I mean, even Oliver was telling me just before World Cup that, back then you'd get a Sandana, but you never knew when you were going to get one of those old ones. And so they were just like a prized possession. So, I mean, they still are.
Yep. So Archie, what does it take, man, for those that are watching that want to get to your level? You own a company, you've been playing pro since 2006. What does it take to get to the top?
To the top of the sport, I feel like I sort of answered this earlier with how I was kind of describing, the way Ryan goes about things and definitely the way I go about things. But it's the same thing as it probably takes to get to the top of anything, which is just an insane level of dedication. You need to be a student for one, like absolute better student than anybody you can think of, right? And then you need to practice what you're learning, and try to push the boundaries of what you're learning all the time, whether that's, I mean, I can give like an example, but for me, when I was like really trying to become the best player I could be, I mean, there was no downtime for me where or maybe, I'm sure there was, but I very much remember there being such a small amount of downtime where I wasn't thinking about how I could be better at the game. Right. And whether that was like, a drive to the field in the morning, I've got like an hour commute to our practice field in San Antonio when I was playing on X-Factor. And that morning, honestly, I personally always loved driving by myself because there's no distraction. I'm not going to talk about what happened last night and, how much fun, whatever. Just don't get me wrong. That's all great, but I was trying to be the best. So that hour for me is prepping how that day is going to be for me, right? What could I do? Here's the layout. Here's the situations, right? What am I going to do? Then we'll go play paintball all day. And then guess what? On the drive back, I get to evaluate what I was doing out there and really critique what I was doing or critique what I saw someone else do, right? And, again, if you're, talent is, I'm probably botching this quote, but it's like talent is natured in, essentially is being alone. It's important, man, because if you're not alone, you're not going to go through that same level of discussion with yourself and really be able to like get deep into your own thoughts and learn as good as you can, so that was a very common thing for me when we first turned pro. I really wanted to, that was like a big opportunity for me to say, you know what, if we're playing pro, I want to be the best I can be. Not best, maybe not best ever, but like best I could be. Right. And that takes still, obviously, if you're going to be the best that you can possibly be at something, that takes us a pretty immense amount of will and a lot of effort. And, that's just one thing that worked for me, personally. But I started dissecting parts of the game that I could try to be better at. Right. Sometimes that was like, I'd really like to be a much better gunfighter. And I don't mean just like a 2-ball snapshot. I mean, understanding the way a fight is won. Right. And that, to me, I don't think anybody talks about that ever. I don't think people really understand that ever, and I understand gunfighting, in my opinion, better than almost anybody in the league. Like I don't get shot out of my spot in a gunfight very often at all. And that's because I've spent the time and effort to study what it is to be in an advantage in a gunfight, right? And how to recognize that and how to capitalize on when you're in an advantage, right? So things like that. But, that's not a drill,
Dude, What a powerful piece of advice, man, because I think a lot of people are going to go out there and drill. I need to do drills. And, in paintball, we talk a lot about getting the reps in, right? You get your 10,000 hours.
Right.
And I don't think I've spoken with anyone who's given the advice of reflection. Sit alone and reflect. Figure out what you did well, figure out what you could do better. Sit alone in that silence and understand it and break it down. That's great advice, man. Awesome. Thank you.
I mean, it's worked for me. I think it works for. I think it would work for a lot of people. But again,
Yeah.
the more you think about something, and with like that harsh set of eyes, you start to get into deeper things that other people just don't think about. And ultimately, when you start doing that, you start applying that to every level of everything you do. It's not even just paintball. You start applying that level of thought into everything you do. And, then when you start doing it, it comes quite naturally. And, you just start getting further and further along. You start understanding things a little bit better, a little bit deeper. And, over time, those little tiny things start adding up, and they start giving you just a slight edge. And in a game of inches, that slight edge over time, starts to tell a good story.
Yeah. I love that. Game of inches. Any given Sunday.
Yeah. Give me an inch, I'll give you a bruise.
There you go. So, Archie, what are you most thankful for that paintball has given you, man? Over these, 20 something years, 23 years?
Yeah, I would say that for me, the thing I'm most, I would say there's two things that I'm really appreciative about. One of them is the people, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to say which one's better, because the people that I've met in this sport are second to none, in my opinion. Like, I've met some of the most beautiful, inspiring people that I'm going to have a hard time topping. I've met so many people like that I can legitimately look up to. I can say are my friends, but they're my friends, but I also look up to them. And that's like, hundreds of people, to be honest. And that is quite very special to me. And they're all unique, because you know how paintball is. It's like it takes kind of a unique person to really dive into it like we have, So that's one. But the second part is really, I'm grateful for the person I've become as a result of playing paintball, because it's got me started, like what I was saying earlier about like the breadcrumbs, right? Like I would argue that paintball, kind of the mindset of being a paintball player is initially what got me started into pursuing things of deep meaning, right? And obviously paintball is meaningful to a lot of people. But I think it does shed light on how, a lot of great practices can really influence your life in a bunch of positive ways. And for me, I'm not saying that if I didn't play paintball, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be the same person, but, I could make the argument that I wouldn't be, right? And I could make the argument that I definitely wouldn't have learned a lot of valuable lessons the way in which I did. And I'm really grateful for a lot of those things, but I would definitely say the mindset, or kind of like the application of understanding that paintball has taught me. Because now I look at it and when I'm doing another hobby, or I'm watching somebody else do something, I can relate to a lesson I've learned because of paintball, and, again, I don't know how I would have learned. I might have learned those same lessons, but it might've been a lot longer, or, whatever. So, for that, I am definitely I give gratitude to paintball for that kind of understanding of things. Yeah, paintball's hard. It's a tricky game, and to try to master something so hard and so difficult is it tends to lend itself to learning and mastering other things quite a little more simpler.
Awesome. Archie, man, thank you so much for your time here tonight. Is there anything that you want to part with for the paintball community?
Man, do I want to part? I would just say that, a thing that I've been trying to really buy into, or I've been telling myself the last several years, that's really important. It's been really important for me. And I think a lot of people would find some importance in that, but it's basically, look around your life and be critical of yourself, right? But also look around for inspiration. Something that I'm really happy to be doing and making that a big priority in my life is those two concepts, right? I'm looking around for inspiration constantly. I want to be surrounded by it. I want to be inspired. And as a result of that inspiration, it ends up kind of pushing me to be, a better me. And on top of that, it paired with, being critical of myself in everything, really. And that means the way in which I wake up, the mood in which I wake up in, and, the stuff I put in my body, and, the people I'm surrounding myself with, all these things are going to be a factor of who I become. And so being critical of myself and being inspired, to me, it's a very good mix. And I welcome anybody else to get started on their own little path, whatever that may be. But I think the biggest thing is to start. So, anyways.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Archie.
Thanks for having me, Isaac.